my name is Vikas Mahajan. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer of the American Red Cross, one of the largest nonprofits in the country, and obviously an amazing humanitarian organization. So I'm more than happy to entertain any questions you have about our organization and share some of our story and share some of my story as well. I'm a graduate of the University of Maryland Smith School of Business. Before it was called the Smith School of Business. I was here from 93 to 97. And I actually started as an engineering major, and then I switched to business. I joined what was called at the time the IBM TQ program, which became the Quest program, that some of you are maybe familiar with. And I decided to make a switch and majored in accounting, but I actually spent most of my time doing computer work. I loved IT, and at the time, in 93, the internet was brand new. Very, very new piece of technology, something that hadn't really been around. No Amazon, nothing like that was around. Netscape was a brand new browser, and everything was kind of, the world was this new open, a world that we were just learning about. And in business school, very much was learning about is how do we apply this technology to business. And that's what got my interest, is I was far more interested in figuring out how technology could be used to help people communicate and connect. And that's what my passion was. So I actually worked here in the business school in the IT department and helped to build out a lot of the technology that's used in those early days. Video conferencing was very cutting edge and all those kinds of things, but really it was about how do we enable business into technology. One of my projects when I was with the Quest programs, they do a practicum at the end of the program. You actually go out and consult with businesses. We went to work for a business, I think it was a defense contractor, Allied Signal, and they wanted us to help them talk about how they wanted to basically to build sort of in their rooms a way to highlight the accomplishments of their department. So when an executive or someone came through the halls, they could talk about all these great things we did. Their thought in their mind was, well, why don't we just put these bulletin boards up and kind of put up the information on the bulletin boards? A very different way of thinking than you would with technology. And our project and my idea was, let's not do it that way. Let's use the web, let's use technology, let's pilot what you're doing in a much more interactive and dynamic way. And that was my early inkling into just how far behind businesses were in adopting technology in the way they did their work. And of course, fast forward now so many years later, and it's embedded in everything we do. No business can get by with it. So, my journey took me from the Smith School. I was assistant director for IT here at the Smith School for a few years. I helped to plan some of the technology that went into that new wing. It's called the new wing for me. The wing over there, the original building was just where we are today. And then I was given an opportunity to work with someone. She was a graduate student while I was an undergrad here, and she went to a company called MicroStrategy, which is still around. They do data warehousing, business intelligence. They're based in Tysons. And at the time, this was right around 1999, right around the dot-com boom, if you will, of that day. And they were looking for young talent who understood technology and again wanted to apply it to business. So I left here and went there and very much rode the wave of the tech boom. We were a high-flying sort of dot-com-ish kind of company. And I remember the company perk there was everybody in the company wanted a fully paid company 7-day Caribbean cruise. That was the company retreat. It was a big deal. The whole company's going to go on a cruise ship that they're paying for. And that was the big bonus. And in the dot-com days, you probably read the stories, and they were just spending money lavishly and investing heavily. But there wasn't a whole lot of return on the money, and so a lot of businesses, a lot of investors, by the time 2001 rolled around, they started pulling back, and so you had this big bubble and suddenly a crash. And it was just an interesting time to be in the industry. It wasn't so much that the technology wasn't there, it was just they couldn't find a way to monetize it. And I developed some specialty skills in cybersecurity. Basically at the time, very new concepts, right? Again, it's a new market, it's a new field, and then suddenly bad actors come into that field too, right? Everyone's trying to break in and do things, and so I developed an expertise there. I left MicroStrategy and I went to work for PwC, which I'm sure many of you may end up at one of the big four. They're great places to work, especially when you're coming out of college. You get exposure to all kinds of great things. So I spent 6.5 years as part of their cybersecurity program. It was very, very nascent, and really learned a lot there. And then I went to work for a nonprofit. My first nonprofit was AARP, Many of you may know them, see their ads on TV. They're targeted at the 50-plus community and very focused on advocacy. They're advocates on Capitol Hill for the needs of the elderly and the aging, and they're also big on lifestyle, making sure that you have an active lifestyle as you age, and not just sit back and retire and that kind of a thing. So that was an interesting experience, and I'm happy to share more about that experience versus where I am today. I joined the American Red Cross in 2015, so I'm now 8+ years into the organization. I was hired directly into the cybersecurity program to run and lead it and to help to run it. I became Chief Information Security Officer in 2020, so I've been in my current role since that time, and I've been through a ransomware attack, I've been through a number of interesting crises, and I'm fortunate I get to meet with our CEO, our Board of Governors, all of our executives. I present to them on a quarterly basis as part of my job on cybersecurity risk. We discuss these issues, and other business issues with them. It's a great opportunity for me, someone in technology, to get to work with the business executives to hear about their challenges. And our job really is to empower the business, and do that by protecting our users, protecting our data, protecting our donors, right? These are all areas of focus for me. So that's sort of where my journey has taken me, and it's been a wonderful experience. I really love the nonprofit space. I love a mission-based organization, which is very much what the American Red Cross is. Fully charitable, 501c3 charitable organization. If you're familiar with what that means, it means we get all our money through donations. We're not AARP was a membership organization. You pay money, you join you're a member, kind of like AAA or other organizations. The Red Cross is completely charitable, and so the way we make money is through people's donations. You can donate time. Obviously, you can become a volunteer and donate your time with us. And we obviously have youth volunteers. We have volunteers of all ages and all statuses. It's really a great place. And that really, at the end of the day, at virtually any nonprofit, is the bulk of the workforce is going to be volunteers. They are the people you depend on for your lifeblood, because you just can't afford to hire so many people, right? It's not the core of your business. Your core is to deliver on that mission, and you look for people who are interested in a common goal, and you work towards making that goal happen. At the Red Cross, it's all about humanitarian service. Our goal is to help alleviate human suffering. There's no better goal, there's no more pure goal than that kind of an approach to life. So you have to be focused on that kind of a thing. So we get wonderful volunteers who are willing to fly into hurricanes, into storms, into disasters, into wildfires, and go help people, set up shelters, get them food, get them some clothing, get them a place to stay, all these types of things. We respond to every house fire in the United States. So if God forbid, your house were to catch on fire and you needed assistance, the Red Cross are what we call second responders, right? Your first responders are your fire, your police, your rescue, all those folks, right? They need to be in there to deal with the emergency of the situation, put the fire out, whatever the case may be. We're there as what we call second responders. We're there to help you pick up the pieces of your life, to get you back on your feet, to help you with counseling, to help you figure out what you do next, right? And that's really our role, and it's a very, very powerful role. But that's a small part of what we do. But as I said, there's kind of three core ways to assist a nonprofit like ours. Donate your time, donate through money. Obviously, you can give us money. We run campaigns all the time, especially during disasters, right? People see our name when something bad happens, unfortunately. There's a big hurricane, there's a big earthquake, there's something major, and then you'll see the Red Cross name all over the place, and people very kindly and generously donate money to try and do what they can to help, right? Not everybody can go fly out to a disaster and help, but you want to do something. So we take that money and we apply it towards helping those in need as part of that disaster, or however else you allow us to use that money. And then the third way we make money is through any services or goods we provide. And in this case, the Red Cross, we have three main businesses at the Red Cross, if you will. We have a humanitarian business, which is, of course, is the folks I was just mentioning that go and help people, right? That's the core mission. We have a training services business, which focuses on helping people learn safety classes. So some of you may have taken it. If you've ever been a lifeguard, you've probably taken a Red Cross lifeguarding class, CPR classes, right? First aid and safety classes. These are the types of things we do. Those we charge money for, we get money, we earn revenues, right? And then the third part of our business, and the largest part of our business actually, is biomedical. We are the largest supplier of blood in the United States. We provide approximately 40% of the nation's blood supply. Again, something that you can come in and donate. We take the donated blood, we process it, make sure it's safe to use. We turn it into blood products like whole blood or plasma or platelets, whatever is needed, and then we sell those to hospitals. Okay, that's what keeps the lights on at the end of the day. Hurricanes and disasters don't happen all the time. People don't see our name out there. So how do we keep people employed? How do we keep our lights on if there's no disasters happening? Well, we rely on that blood business. And the blood business is equally life-saving. I think people take for granted sometimes just how important that is. If you're in need of some emergency, if you have sickle cell, if you have some other terrible blood disorder or disease and you need assistance, that blood is a life-saving service. And I know that personally. I had a heart transplant 5 years ago, and I received Red Cross blood as part of that heart transplant. So for me, it's a very personal connection. And I suspect with most people, it's something like that. Their family, or someone suffered a house fire, and the Red Cross was there to help them, right? So we touch people's lives in a very, very important way, and that's usually why we see people come and help us as well. So, as I said, it's a really powerful mission. It's a great organization, but that's the way we have to earn revenue, is to sell that blood back to hospitals, and then we're able to keep, as I said, the lights on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year when there's no disasters happening either. So again, I'd love to take any questions or anything you'd like to know further about the organization. Feel free. Yes?
You touched on it, but if you would mind sharing about like the perks of working in a nonprofit versus a for-profit company.
Yeah, great question. He was asking about the perks of a nonprofit versus a for-profit. The perks are not in money, and your reward is really it's that ability to feel good about what you're doing. And honestly, I think this is attracting a lot of young people, and I'm really pleased to see it. People who want to feel like I'm just not helping some billionaire buy a plane or build a spaceship and go to space or something. Not that any of those are bad things. I'm not judging anybody. If I had that money, I would love to do the same thing. My point is, I think people want more fulfilling work. And sometimes there's a point in your life, hey, when you're young, you want to make a lot of money, you want to do great things. But there's a point in your life, a lot of the people I hire are people who've done that. They've made their money. They've had successful careers, but they want to find a way to give back. And I think the reward is really in knowing that every day what you're doing is contributing to helping somebody do something good. So one of the stories I have to tell about that is during, I can't remember the name of the hurricane, but back about 5 years ago, there was a whole series of hurricanes that ripped through the Caribbean, and one of them really devastated Puerto Rico. Took the power out, the 90% of the power in the country was gone, and the island was gone, and it was really, terrifying for those folks. We had people at the Red Cross, they would fly in before the hurricane hit, hunker down, and then we wouldn't hear from them for 2 or 3 days. And then all of a sudden, ping, all they were doing, they said, where have you been? I heard you. We said, I've been busy setting up satellite communications so that we can help people, right? And it's that kind of noble work that you feel good about. So from my perspective, I'm not out there obviously doing that. I'm providing cybersecurity. I'm making sure that we're safe, that we can do this business, that we can help people, that their data isn't being stolen, that our data isn't being stolen, that people feel safe and confident about the services we provide, and to make sure that those folks on the ground can do their jobs well, right? I want to make sure I'm not, I'm preventing bad things from happening to them, and I'm also not getting in their way, right? And making sure they have a safe environment to do their jobs. And that's really, I think, a large part of working at a nonprofit is you should believe in the mission of the organization. If you're not connected to it in some way, it's very hard to really appreciate it. It becomes just another job, and it shouldn't be. It should be something you're connected to.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
You spoke a little bit about data security. How does that differ in a nonprofit versus a for-profit company?
Yeah, it's a great question. The question about data security and how that differs in a nonprofit versus a for-profit. What I always tell people is the entire reputation of a nonprofit, especially something like the Red Cross, is based entirely on trust. You trust us to do the right thing with whatever you give us, your time, your money, your blood donation, and your data, right? When we do blood donation, if you've ever donated blood, you'll see the form. We collect a lot of PII, or personally identifiable information or personal health information, because we have to. It's required by the FDA to make sure we know the blood is safe, etc. We have to be very safe stewards of that information, okay? We have a responsibility, and this is very much ingrained in the culture of the Red Cross. We have a responsibility to do what's right by our donors. and that means safeguarding that data, protecting that data, and making sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. And so we kind of feel like we're fiduciaries for some of the information you give us, and that means we have a very personal responsibility to make sure it's safe. Like any company, of course, we have employee data, HR data, all this kind of stuff. But I would say, from our perspective, it's the stewardship, it's that sense of responsibility that we don't want to ever break the trust between us and our donors that really drives why we do things. It's interesting being in a nonprofit, and I'd say the big difference is we're not heavily regulated, right? You go into financial services, you go into banking, you go into healthcare, those are heavily regulated industry. The government says you must do this, you must do that. It's not like that at all at a charitable nonprofit. We have hardly any regulations. Really, it's mostly, in the case of healthcare, we do have a healthcare business, it's a biomed, but it's different. We're not a hospital, right? We don't have HIPAA laws over us. We don't have to, we're not dealing with patients, we're dealing with blood donors, and so it's different. But we still want to apply the same high standards of security to the way we collect that data, even though we don't legally have to. We're not, as I said, a HIPAA-covered entity, as the term goes. We still feel like we have a sense of responsibility to protect that data, to those high standards. So that's really, I would say, is what's interesting is we as an organization had to learn, and again, as threats started coming in against nonprofits, and they are legitimate threats I can talk about. People don't realize that sometimes. You think, hey, we're doing good, right? We're trying to help people. Who would ever want to harm our organization? Who would ever want to do something bad against the Red Cross? Well, there are bad people everywhere, unfortunately. I have to deal with them all the time. And someone in a foreign country has no idea that the Red Cross is doing that. They just see dollar signs. They see money, they see opportunity, and they're going to steal the data and ransom it and say, pay me a bunch of money to release it, right? So it's sad but true. Just saying we're neutral and we're not doing anything bad is not enough in cyberspace to protect you. We're having a lot of discussions about this. You may be familiar with the Geneva Conventions. The Geneva Conventions have been adopted over the years, and they're designed to help protect people. And you probably hear about them a lot these days because of what's happening in the world with conflict. But again, we have to be able to get access to people to help them, to give them humanitarian aid, etc. And organizations like the Red Cross are that neutral party. There's a whole set of fundamental principles of ours, but two of them I'll call out. Independence, okay, and we act independently and through neutrality. We are a neutral organization. We do not take sides in conflict, okay? And that's very important. Impartiality is the word I was looking for. And we're impartial. We don't take sides. We don't decide who's good or bad in a conflict. We're just there to help people. And the Geneva Conventions are designed to protect organizations like us. And so that's why you see people with the Red Cross logo and shirts on their backs and everything else. You see our buildings with Red Cross crosses on them to say, hey, this is a vehicle that's doing something good. Don't target it for bombing or whatever, right? So the problem is, how do you translate that into cyberspace, right? How do you say we're all kids into the cyberspace world? And this is something we're talking about with other Red Cross societies around the world is, can we create some way of protecting us in cyberspace as well? At least to give that indicator that, hey, our systems are being used to do this kind of good stuff. Don't target us as hackers, right? Again, a lot of it is dependent upon the people. Do they care? Will they pay attention? Will they do something? And my thought is, can we have the industry help us as well? If we raise this quote-unquote flag saying we're neutral and independent on the internet, can the other cybersecurity companies of the world maybe come to our aid and help us and say, hey, the Red Cross is in the middle of a humanitarian crisis. Let's put some extra eyeballs on their system. So if they're getting attacked by a DDoS attack or getting attacked by something, that we can try to sway that off and protect them, right? And do that kind of thing. So those are some of the thoughts we have. But cyberspace is just that way. It's the wild, wild west. And we have to, even though we're that do-good organization, we still have to face a lot of the same threats that any major corporation does in terms of people wanting to steal data and do bad things. Sir?
With the data link issue that you talked about with the text, what are the ways that you found successful in trying to gain people's trust back after those events happen?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we gain people's trust? A lot of it is open, honest communications. I'm very, very big on that in the way I run my team and the way I run things at the Red Cross. I have about 30 people who work for me now in the cybersecurity program. We've doubled our budget in the last 3 or 4 years investing in cybersecurity, and my biggest number one mission within the business, was to make cybersecurity a priority, not just for me, but for my colleagues in the business. Because at the end of the day, the business dictates what's going to happen, right? They're deciding what ultimately to do, what risks they're going to take on. My job is to make sure I can present those risks to them. What is it that you're facing? What are the threats? And help me understand what you're doing so that I can help you understand the risk and then help you counter those risks. Put in security measures or processes to help protect those things, right? And so a lot of it is just gaining trust of people. I don't want my team to be viewed as Big Brother. We're not here to monitor what you're doing and then also I don't want to be the police. I want to say, yes, you can do this, no, you don't. I want to work with you as what I call a trusted advisor. It's a big term in business, and you should definitely learn about it. But the idea here is to build the relationship, the trust with other people, so that they can come to you when they need assistance and feel like you're there to help them, not there to judge them or to, find harm in them. People will find ways to go around you. And people do that all the time. They have goals, they have needs, they have to get things done. If you're just constantly putting up obstacles, they're going to want to go around you. So my job is to be that enabler, to be that trusted advisor who can say, come to me with your problems, come to me with your needs, and I'll help you solve them. I think that's a much more cooperative approach.
And in terms of the public, how do you get their access to that?
Great question.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the internal discussion. And then publicly, the Red Cross has, I'm not directly responsible for it. We have an entire communications team who obviously works on this. As you can imagine, when you're doing anything in the public eye, what our volunteers do when they work, there's people who love us and there's people who don't like us, right? And you have to constantly deal with this. We have an entire communications team who really go out of their way to monitor that and to try and earn the people's trust and work towards helping people to understand our work and our mission and be clear about it. They have folks who work with obviously the press and things that come out of there. They have people who deal with social media. They have teams who deal with different aspects of that. When we have a cyber incident, if we were to have one, unfortunately, knock on wood somewhere, these are not even wood anymore, but I haven't had to deal with a major cyber breach. Okay, we dealt with one and I contained it, and we didn't have anybody steal any data or do anything. Thank goodness, we have good processes. But we took a lesson learned from that to say, okay, what can we do to improve our processes? And one of them was to put together an incident response plan, a cyber incident response plan specifically. And that really involves bringing together people who don't commonly work together. So I had people from IT, I had people from every line of business, biomed, humanitarian resources, HR people, I had legal people, and I had communications people. And you have to bring them all together to work together to solve the problem. What I always tell people is when something like that happens, a cybersecurity incident, it isn't an IT problem. It's a business problem. It's impacting the way the business can run. It impacts our ability. If our biomedical systems were to get hit, that means no blood for 40% of the nation. That's crazy, okay? That's people whose lives are on the line who are going to be impacted if we have something like that happen. That has to be more than just an IT issue. It has to be a business issue, and we have to plan and act accordingly and make sure we have the processes and the plans in place. So communications is a big stakeholder when those things happen. They have to communicate both to internally, to staff, to everybody, whose systems who can't log into their computers, what's going on. They have to make sure they can do that. And they have to deal with the public, and they have to say, hey, here's what's happening, here's what the Red Cross is facing, here's how we're dealing with the problem. We also have to deal with legal. We have to deal with the government, because then, especially in the world of security and privacy, every attorney general in every state has their own rules. This country doesn't have a nationwide policy on this. So every state has their own set of rules. So we have to work through that as well. And we ultimately have to, I think, people always say, it's usually never the issue that you got breached. It's sort of, are you trying to cover it up? Are you trying to do something? Are you not being transparent about it? That always gets you in trouble. And so that goes back to this sort of, hey, we have to be open and honest about what's going on. So I'll give you an example of what just happened. It didn't happen to our Red Cross. We are the American Red Cross, but there's also a Red Cross societies around the world, okay? So every country sort of has their own Red Cross, and then we have a global movement, and the main group that runs that is called the International Federation of the Red Cross, IFRC. They're based in Geneva, Switzerland. And they suffered a breach, I think last January or 2 years ago, not too long ago. This was right at the start of the Ukraine-Russian conflict, okay? They ran a system there. We have an application they're hosting called Restoring Family Links, RFL for short. And its sole purpose is during times of conflict, like war, every Red Cross society can help people in their country find the loved ones in the impacted nations to help find out where they are. Okay, it's basically just, hey, I have family in Russia, or I have family in Ukraine. I heard that I can't get in contact with them. I need to find out where they are. Did they go to a shelter? Were they evacuated? Were they taken to some place to be rescued? I have no idea. They can turn to the Red Cross. So if you're an American who has family in Ukraine, you're trying to figure out where your loved ones are, you can come to us and say, hey, this is so-and-so, here's their picture, here's some information about them, here's my last contact with them, can you go help me find them? We will put that information into this IFRC system, the International Federation of the Red Cross, because they have people on the ground in all those locations. They're dealing with the international conflict. And they're going to connect with other Red Crosses, so they'll connect with the Ukrainian Red Cross, or the other European Red Crosses that may be taking in people who are victims, right? And wherever they may have been sent around the world, and can help locate those people. So it's a great, again, another part of a humanitarian mission. We want to help those people. Well, that system was breached back in January or February, as I said, of either 2021 or 2022, I can't remember. And it was a huge deal. It was a huge deal, and it was done by professionals. It was done by professional hacking, and so we believe, and again, I wasn't in touch, so I don't know directly what happened. I was hearing from the IFRC and working with them, but they believe it was a nation-state actor, meaning some because of the way the techniques they used to hack it had to have been done by some really sophisticated professionals, likely people from a nation or sponsored by a nation to go in and hack the system to look at data. They were basically, we believe, looking for information about people who were displaced. It could have been political refugees, people like that, right? You have to remember, we don't judge. We're not here to pass the judgment on anybody. We're here to help people. But nations might be interested in knowing, oh, this person who is speaking disparagingly about us, we want to find out where they went, right? And keep them in the country. Who knows? The point is, that's an example of where the trust becomes harmed, right? Where you risk losing people to say, hey, how can I trust the Red Cross if you guys are getting hacked? Well, the IFRC went very public about it and said, hey, look, we are victims here. We are the ones who suffer. We are trying to help people. And some country came in and tried to hack our systems. Now, we're going to put in proper defenses. We're going to do what we can to protect this data going forward. And they did. We worked with them on designing new security measures and everything else. And then building that trust between us and society. But more to the public, they went very public about it. And that's when they really pushed on countries saying, hey, you need to leave us alone. We're acting neutrally. Don't come after us. And it there's sort of a public shaming that goes along with doing that type of thing with an organization like ours, right? Now we have to do our due diligence, as I said. We can't just say our systems are open. Anybody can come in and shame on you if you hack us. No, we're putting in security and protections in place. But I can't stop, a nation-state actor with all these resources. If they want to hack you, they're going to hack you. Simple as that. But our job is to say, hey, look. We're gonna do our job no matter what, but we definitely want to kind of publicly shame you if you go after us. Yeah.
So, given that the Red Cross has to is one of the largest suppliers of blood in the United States.
Yes.
How is the transportation and storage of blood handled? Given that it's biohazardous material and bound to degrade quickly if not in proper conditions.
Yeah, great question. The gentleman was asking me again about our blood products and how do we handle those and make sure they're stored safely, etc. So yes, we're 40% of the nation's blood supply. And by the way, that makes us a critical infrastructure. So if you go to the federal government website, the CISA, which is the cybersecurity agency of the federal government, they have categories of industries they consider to be critical infrastructure for the nation, right? So your hospitals, your electric suppliers, right? Your gas line suppliers. You've heard all about these things the last 3 years being hacked, right? They're all critical infrastructure. If those go down, it's going to impact the way the nation can operate. Well, blood is also on that list, and so we're definitely considered part of that critical infrastructure. Meaning we have to we protect that at all costs to make sure we can provide that service. So blood is interesting, and I'm learning more about it all the time. I actually was able to visit one of our blood processing centers up here in Baltimore, where we handle a lot of the blood from this area. And yeah, different products have different shelf lives, and so we have an entire logistics system that manages that blood product. From the moment that blood is collected, it comes in, we collect it from the donor, we take it to the processing center, and every step along the way that blood is scanned and tagged. We know where it came in from, who brought it, and we know who's handling it at any given time. So it goes through, as I said, sort of processing, depending on how it's being used. Is it being turned into platelets or plasma or other products, depending on what's needed by the hospital? And we follow that through the lifestyle. And different products have different shelf lives. I don't know the details, but let's just say, for example, whole blood may last 3 days on the shelf, whereas plasma may only last 24 hours on the shelf, right? And so hospitals, we have to kind of be in a constant supply and demand, coordinating with those hospitals when they put orders in to be able to make sure we can provide those things in time. So we actually have fleet management services. We have a whole bunch of things that track it. We obviously have big giant refrigeration systems, cooling systems. Everything is temperature monitored and controlled. If even it's the slightest bit off, we have to dump the blood. If it's not considered safe, it's again up to FDA standards. FDA dictates how to handle those things. We have to make sure our systems are under that. So every temperature sensor, every monitor in our manufacturing facilities is connected, wired. We know exactly what's happening all the time. We have cameras monitoring those systems as well. So if anything goes wrong, we know what to do with it. How do we get it to products? Ultimately, right, the hospital places the order. We have an ordering system that tracks that. We figure out what they need, put it into a box, and then get it onto a truck, usually run by a volunteer who's saying, I'll go take deliveries for you, and send it to a hospital, just in time, very much in many cases. There are some people, very sophisticated workers on our blood manufacturing floors, who I remember heading to Baltimore and seeing this firsthand. We had a group of people who were working on very specialized blood. There was certain blood from certain individuals that was the only blood that could be given to babies, like pre-born preemies in the hospital, in the most intensive care kind of natal services for the babies. And that blood had a very, very hours-long shelf life. So they had to put this blood together in 60 minutes to make sure it was safe, and then get it, boom, shipped out right to the hospital right away. There's folks who deal with that kind of thing. It was really exciting to see. But as I said, yeah, everything has to be monitored and controlled, and to make sure that it's safe all the way along the line. We know exactly how it was handled, we know exactly how it was stored, and we know exactly where it goes. Yeah, good question. Yes, sir.
Obviously, you're dealing with a pretty short shelf life, and with something we can't control, like accidents. What procedures and processes do you have in place to better respond to fluctuations in demand, and then also how do you actually get supply to provide for that demand?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really about supply and demand. So specifically to the accidents, I don't know the details. I'm sure there's someone monitoring traffic and kind of helping to deal with that, and they may have ways to reroute the blood products and get it to places. But specific to the supply and demand question, that is the hardest thing to manage. We're regularly having campaigns about we need blood. You'll hear about it in certain places, and it was really crazy during the pandemic, because then how do you collect blood at all? It became a real challenge to get people to come in to donate blood. There's only one way to collect blood. I'm sorry, can't do it virtually. Someone's got to come in there. You've got to stick an arm in and draw the blood. And when there's disasters that happen, so if there's a hurricane in Florida, we can't get Floridians to donate blood. We're impacted. We have to get it from somewhere else, and we have to ship it down to Florida to get it there safely to those people, right, who need it. So again, it's a constant supply and demand problem, and it requires a lot of coordination and communication with the hospitals. Hospitals have to tell us what they're seeing, what their needs are. They have a sense of what their regulars are, right? So if you have a scheduled surgery, then they know, oh, okay, this person's going in for this procedure, they may need this many units of blood to handle it, right? But it's the unknown where it can be crazy, and then the weather and all these things play factors into that. You'll see us regularly, as I mentioned, you'll see, hey, the Red Cross is in need of blood, we're asking people to come in and donate, and we'll do certain campaigns to try and encourage more donations, but that is definitely a constant challenge. There's no easy fix for it. The biggest thing is to just get people aware and out there to try and donate blood. Really, it's a very, very small percentage of the population that donates blood. And it's one of those things where virtually anybody can do it, and it's one of those things where we just try to educate people. Hey, we're going to make it as safe as possible, as possible, as comfortable as we can, and hopefully we can get you to donate a pint of blood, and then hopefully become a regular. But it all depends on the health of the person and the time it takes. And we try to make that easier too. We try to schedule blood drives. We try to go out. We have mobile trucks that will send out to my wife was telling me about this. She works for Wells Fargo Bank. They would drive a Red Cross bloodmobile to the corporate office for Wells Fargo, and then they would have people come and donate during their lunch hour or whatever. Nowadays, who's working in an office? We're all working virtually, so that became a challenge too. Is now we have to figure out how to get people to come to one of our donation centers to donate blood in person, or come to some event. There may be a community healthcare event, and we do set up a blood donation there, right, and do a drive. So there's some different ways to market it. We've been working a lot with different communities, different cultural communities as well, to say, hey, you're hosting a community for Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders or different cultures, and say, hey, maybe we can help target a blood drive to these communities as well. And it's different ways of connecting with people. So that's really what it's about.
So, isn't that like people can have conditions that they don't know of? Like, for example, I only recently discovered that I have a novel type of anemia.
Yeah.
Is the Red Cross obligated to donate, or if it turns out that there may be indicators of some sort of condition or disease in the blood that they didn't know about?
Yeah, it's a good question. So saying, as part of their screening, what do we do and how do we inform people? So again, I'm not part of the blood business directly, but I can tell you, yes, every pint of blood is screened and checked to check for it. Again, it has to be suitable. It has to meet those FDA requirements to be safe and sound. And some people don't know. You don't know until the first time you go in. They usually do a little prick and they test a little bit just to see if there's something there. But if we do take a blood pint and we do then run it through and we discover that there's another problem, we'll take it off the line and discard it, and then we will usually inform the donor and say, hey, here's what we found, or you need to go see a medical professional about this issue. Right? We're not doctors, we won't diagnose you with anything, but we'll certainly let you know.
Yeah. Okay, that's
Yeah.